Well, we'll begin right away with this afternoon's session. The first presentation from Dominic Cavendish, who writes for the Daily Telegraph and is a stage actor, having recently staged Coming Up for Air, and is in charge of the theatrical celebration on Orwell, and also directs the theatervoice.com. The title remains Coming Up for Air, Revisited, Orwell, England, and the Idea of Escape.
Thank you very much. It's an honour to be here. I'm hoping that you're not feeling all levels out at this particular moment in the afternoon. Before I begin, I'd just like to put forward a quick disclaimer. The title of the 1946 volume of Orwell's complete collected writings is Smothered Under Journalism, and it's a phrase that has often bubbled up in my head while attempting to draw material together for this lecture. As I've just been pointed out, I'm a theatre critic by trade, a job that requires fairly constant runs of travel and a relentless stream of copy deadlines. I'm not complaining about that, and it's a rewarding occupation which Orwell himself dipped into for a time. But when I gratefully accepted the offer of giving a lecture here today many months ago, I fancifully supposed I'd be able to find sufficient number of free afternoons to sift through Orwell's work, looking for nuggets on the subject that instantly suggested itself to me: Orwell, England, and the idea of escape. Those afternoons have not been especially forthcoming, which means I sit before you today knowing that there are relevant books and articles left unread, ideas and arguments only partially developed here this afternoon. In a way, the pressure of researching this presentation has helped me to renew my acquaintance with and my fondness for George Bowling, the narrator of Coming Up for Air. He is desperate for a few days of quiet reflection and escape from the daily grind. And even though he does manage to carve out some spare time for himself, free from his usual responsibilities, he becomes rather unstuck in the process, unsure why he has even bothered to attempt what he has done. So, that's a long way of saying that I'm stressing at this point the following remarks are not offered up from a position of academic authority, but from a lowly angle of appreciation as a journalist enthusiast with an above average working knowledge of Coming Up for Air. I got better acquainted with Orwell's 1939 novel because I decided 2 years ago, in a sudden spirit of what the hell, which again I think has affinities with George Orwell, to adapt it for the stage as a monologue. It spoke to me across the decades, and so far as one could tell, judging by the reaction of audiences and critics watching the show, first in Edinburgh, then in London, it still speaks to many other people too. Why is that? Why does this apparently unremarkable tale of a nondescript, middle-class, middle-aged man fleeing suburbia to the countryside of his youth have the power to make us think and feel keenly about the confining setup of modern life? Besides Animal Farm and 1984, Coming Up for Air ranks as small fry in Orwell's oeuvre. Yet it endures, is referenced, quoted, read. Maybe that's because, aside from its own particular charms, its humour, its descriptive power, it distills an Orwellian preoccupation with imprisonment and escape. His urge to examine human beings in the most straitened circumstances and consider their often thwarted urges for freedom. Like the fishbowl pool into which George Bowling appears as a boy in rural Oxfordshire, maybe Coming Up for Air has hidden depths. I'd like to begin near the end, with Orwell hurrying to complete 1984 in the face of worsening tuberculosis. A writer living in a state of withdrawal from society, from England, on the Scottish island of Jura, 1947-48, he produces a novel that pushes the idea of human captivity to new, nightmarish limits. Winston Smith is a minded official in a totalitarian slave state where absolute conformity is the rule, submission to the will of the party, embodied by the totemic Big Brother, is expected in all things, and even thought of descent is punishable by death, accompanied by torturous mental reprogramming. To quote, asleep or awake, working or eating, indoors or out of doors, in the bath or in bed, no escape. Nothing is your own except a few cubic centimetres inside your skull. And those few cubic centimetres can be gnawed away by the rats in room 101 as Winston realises his mounting and decisively self-defeating terror. He becomes a sort of lab rat himself when brought face to face with his caged nemesis. The grim experiment is controlled in such a way that he must give in, yielding up the last vestige of his autonomous humanity in a feral animal reflex of self-preservation. Do it to Julia, tricks Winston, betraying his one true love. And look at the way he is released by that action in the novel's vertiginous prose. I quote, "He was falling backwards into enormous depths, away from the rats. He was still strapped in the chair, but he had fallen through the floor, through the walls of the building, through the earth, through the oceans, through the atmosphere, into outer space, into the gulf between the stars." Winston Smith is giddy with escape. Yes, of course, it is the final nail in the coffin for him. In 1984, you don't get away at the 11th hour. Independently of that book's narrative, it seems appropriate and inevitable even that all should have arrived at this dead-end destination. When we survey the work, we see a pattern of individuals attempting to get away from forces that threaten to overwhelm them, and which to a greater or lesser degree finally do so. The word escape and the desire for escape crop up repeatedly. When we survey the life, it's possible to see Eric Blair himself as something of an escape artist. He adopted a pseudonym, he altered his accent, trying to pass himself off as belonging to a lower social class, and embedded himself in a wide range of character-altering experiences. He was famously down and out, frequently off and about. He started life in India, grew up in Oxfordshire, spent formative years in Burma, slummed in Paris, fought in Spain, and ended up on that Hebridean island. Yet I'd argue he was no dilettante escapist. It's obvious he was no dilettante escapist. If he was restless, he was also driven. He avoided the traps of conformity, but at the same time he rushed towards sticky situations. In his biography, Bernard Crick reminds us of Orwell's untiring work ethic. He could only see a holiday as a chance to begin a different kind of work. Orwell's adventures, if we are tempted to see his peripatetic course through life in that light, aren't opportunities to cut loose. They are the means by which he reflects more intently on the subject at hand, and the subject at hand becomes more bound up with the idea of escape itself as he continues writing, or so I argue.